Welcome to Boating with Tess. Tess says hello. And no, I don't like being videoed. But here we are. Today, we will tackle a fun little project related to our electrical system. Note, I am not an electrician, and none of this advice should be, none of this information should be construed as advice, or in any way have me get in trouble. You should always work with a licensed professional, or at least not kill yourself by electrocuting yourself. So, with that preamble done, what we have today is my water pressure. When that is on and the pump is running continuously, it trips itself, clicks like that, and then the water pressure, decreases and stops working. Flip it back on, and if I'm running the sink, or usually it's the shower, then it'll trip back off again. It is a 10 amp breaker switch. And recently, Tesla authorized me to replace the water pump, which is down over here. And when we did that, we needed to replace it with a different size water pump. So what we got in here, which is going to be difficult to see, is a wet mess. But separate from that, see. I can't rotate the camera that way. It's on this tripod. Maybe you can see that. Water pump. And a little light. You can see that it says 13 amps. Continuous draw. That is the reason that it's tripping the breaker. Because the breaker will probably go to like 10 amps. It should trip once it gets up to about 15 or so. Maybe it's 12, somewhere in that range, 12 to 15. If it senses that there's that much current for any period of time, it will trip the breaker. Don't want tripping breakers and don't want to create an electrical fire. So, two things that are important to notice. One, that the breaker is rated to protect everything downstream of it. And in this case, that means that there is a wire that runs from the panel over to that one appliance, the pump. That wire, I happen to know, is rated for up to 20 amps. The size of the wire is appropriate for that. And just for convenience purposes, because the old pump was rated at a lower amperage, they put in a lower breaker to protect the pump. If the pump started to draw too much current, it means that there's something wrong with the pump and it should trip the breaker. When I replace the pump, the newer pump, higher amp draw, it says 13, but when I measure it, it's normally at 13, but once it gets up to high pressure, it goes up to almost 16 amps. So, need to replace this breaker which is a 10 amp breaker with a 15 amp breaker. So, voila. One expensive 15 amp breaker. Expensive is all relative, right? So this happens to match. Now, I heard from the chandlery here in Deltaville that they basically make these marine breakers there's two different sizes. This is the smaller size, and then in the smaller size there's two sub options. One that has the prongs that are straight and the prongs that are angled, like this one's angled. If we look on the back of my panel, we can see that some of them are the angled ones. These ones here, for example, they're kind of angled in, and some of them are straight. These ones up here are straight. The one that we're dealing with is straight, but this is pretty small gauge metal. I'm just going to bend it so that it is straight being as this was the one that they had in stock, and so I can finish the job today. So first thing, safety. You want to shut off power to the panel. In this case, this is a DC panel. DC panel 1, DC panel 2, and this is my AC panel. So I need to shut all that off because I'm going to be in the back of this, and I don't want a screwdriver to slip and get somewhere caught in this rat's nest and then electrocute me. So what we'll do is the main feed to the boat is right back here. So if I flip this off, the boat no longer has power. You can probably hear some things running and notice that like for example, this cooler is still on. The reason that is on is because I have batteries, and not only do I have batteries, I have, and you probably have on your boat as well, a inverter. This is a centralized one, so this is an inverter and charger. So what I need to do is I need to turn the inverting function off. So now I have de-energized the AC side, and I have the DC side is still connected. To get the DC side shut off, unfortunately, there's no breaker, there's no main breaker on the DC panel. I have to go down into the engine room. So as with most of these sort of projects, you think it's, oh, I'll just swap out that one breaker. Well, it's always a little bit more complicated than that. So what we have to do is go down into the engine room. Okay, so now I get down into the engine room. Down in the engine room, I have some additional switches, and you should take a look at your manual if you have a recent boat, but if you have a boat like mine that's 50 years old, manual from the manufacturer is not going to do any good because it's all been redone probably, which is the case here. So for me, I happen to know that I can turn this switch, which is my house bank, and that will turn off all power to the breaker panel, to the inverter, to everything. I have a separate way to just turn off the inverter charger, but I'm not going to mess with that. And that doesn't, as long as I get that house bank off. And now we can actually get to work. Now, you flip switches, you think things are off. That's not enough. You really want to test probably a couple of times just to make sure. No, still too low. Switch up here. Okay. So what you want to do next up is test. So get out your multimeter. And let's do some checking just to make sure that things are really off before I go sticking my hands in there, frying myself. We can clip this somewhere handy. How about here where you guys can see it too? All right, power this thing on. So what we want to look for is voltage in this case, so the V. And this one happens to auto detect whether it's DC or AC. So that's kind of convenient. And so now you take your test probes, and For the DC one that we're going to deal with, which is over here, we can just touch the feed bar, which is this guy. So that, and then the ground, which is going to be, where's the ground? There's got to be ground here somewhere. Now, here is the AC grounds. One of these should have a light. Now this will be something I'll cut out later, probably. Me searching around for the ground. Oh, here. Okay. The ground. There's a ground bar back over here. And so now when I touch between those two, we're seeing zeros on the meter. And we can do the same thing for our AC loads. I'm being very careful not to touch any metal here while I'm checking until I know that and have confirmed that there is nothing energized. Pretty complicated with boats because you have AC and DC, and even just disconnecting the boat from the shore doesn't mean that you don't still have AC and DC, right? Connecting it from the shore will remove the AC coming in, but you have charging circuitry and you likely have an inverter. So you want to make sure that that those are not energized. Okay, so we've now confirmed that. This is off. And so now what we can do is start getting this breaker out. Now the way these breakers work is there is a screw on the face. That's what kind of holds the breaker to the face. So for this water pressure one, we'll undo this screw. Then on the back side, and I actually started playing with this a little while ago, so I've already undone this wire, which connected in here to the breaker terminal. And then you can see over on this side there's this bar, and that bar is the feed into the breakers. So number 5 is the one we're removing. Notice it says 10 amps, and the one we're going to plug in there is going to be 15. And the wire capacity can easily hold 15, so we're good on that. Now, these bars, unfortunately, and I can zoom in a little bit, these bars block the breaker from coming out. So, kind of obnoxious. You have to disconnect all of the breakers on the bar to get the bar out of the way to be able to get the breaker out. So that's going to be tons of fun. And that's what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to see if I can get you set up where I don't knock you over on this tripod and get to it. Let's see if you can see, and that's going to be out of the way enough. Okay. So another good thing to do is to take a video or take pictures of anything before you disconnect, so you know where to plug it back in. In this case, I've got this video, so we should be good. So it looks like this one, this power feed bar is daisy chained down to this bar. So this is definitely the feed side, and it's it's daisy chained down to here, which is my bigger breaker for the macerator in the head. I'm going to attempt to just loosen all these screws, and maybe I can get the bar to tweak enough out of the way to get this thing out. I'm not feeling super hopeful about that, but give it a shock. Give it a shot, not a shock. Joking about shocks while working on electrical stuff is not cool. Don't do it. No one wants to get shocked. As electrifying as it might be. And now you get a good view of the back of my balding head. Always handy. Okay. Lower part of this bar is loose. Now we'll jump up here, loosen up the main feed to the bar. And start loosening some other attachments to the bar. Had me freaking out there. Little snap sounds. Makes me think it's electrical. But it wasn't. It was just plastic down here. Some of the zip ties popping. Okay. That's going to be enough. Oh, I'm not going to get this thing completely off, I think. Annoying. All right. Start at the bottom. Okay, so there's wire 1. Make sure that that gets connected. Most of these are just the bar connecting to the breaker. The only ones I gotta really pay attention to are the ones that are daisy chaining to another panel to make sure I'm getting it to the right panel at the right spot. Management wants to know why there's this big old hole. And also, where's dinner? What do you have to say about that? You ready for dinner? Soon. As soon as I get this done, okay? We'll do dinner and a walk. Still Still not enough movement. Now if I was taking out this bottom one, I'd probably be okay, but I'm going to keep going. That one's not loosened up yet. Yeah, this just seems like a bad design to do it this way, where you have to, anytime you change any one breaker, you have to take them all apart. It's dumb. The other approach to this that sometimes people take is they disconnect the panel from the board, but I think this is still the easier approach. Okay, so that tells me something. The fact that that's shaped like that, I didn't have to actually remove all these things. That's really obnoxious. I could have just loosened them and then the bar could have slid out. Well, that'll make reinstallation a little easier because I can put the screws in first, just a little bit, and then slide the bar back on. Oh yeah, this is going to be a ton of fun. Getting those all lined up. Well, anyway, let's get this other one out first. Okay, so, oh, I gotta undo the screw on the outside. No, it's not coming out. Careful about dropping these things. If you make it down into your build, you'll never find them again. And they're like these custom weird shaped ones. Okay, so there we go. All new. Screws line up good. And we'll just have to tweak that back piece. So this will go in that orientation. No, that orientation. Right, yes. Which means that I really only need to bend this one a little bit to get it to line up more straight. I almost do it by hand. I use a pair of pliers so I get it a little bit more even. Which you're probably not supposed to do. You're probably supposed to never bend them, but there, it's done. And then we can pop this sucker back in there. In there for the first time. Get it lined up. I'm going to go ahead and put the screw on the outside in first. Get that snugged up a little bit. All right. And so that's the power coming out of the breaker, and then the power going in will come from this. Of course, these screws are stainless, which means that you can't use a magnetic. Get these things in here. That's fun. There we go. All right. Making progress. 2 to go. Okay, so we got to make sure we get the sub feed on this one, and the main feed. I waited on this one because it kind of interferes with the other ones, so I felt like it probably made sense to do it last. Okay, we're back. And the bus bar is in, but we still need to tighten everything down and get this last bolt in. The new breaker was just a slightly larger bolt, so I had to add a little persuasion to get that other one in there. So one thing you want to be careful of is not insulating your connections. So for example, this has got all this insulation there. You want to get that so that's got a good strong contact, the most surface to surface mating you can. And same for any other ones that are kind of daisy chained on, because particularly for these feed ones it's important, because if you have all of these on, you know, you got 20 amps, 10 amps, 5 amps, now another 15 amps, 10 amps, all of that is being fed by this one wire. So if this wire has a loose connection and those are all on, it's going to pull a whole lot of current and it'll get hot where there's a failure in the current and you have the potential for a fire. So don't want to get the nickname Smoky, because you'll never get the smoke to go back in. Okay, that is well secured, and now just to make sure I've got this good and in there, I'm going to jump down to this bottom one that way, because it looks like it's kind of wanting to pop out a bit, so as I'm tightening it down I need to kind of hold it in. I recommend doing these systematically, because otherwise you miss one, you got a potential for fire. If any of these are loose and they're on, you're going to have a potential for a spark, or anytime that there's not a lot of surface area touching, that will tend to get hot when a lot of current goes through it. So, all right, that one's good. 2 to go. It's the same piece of plastic popping back and forth, and every time, because it sounds, that's the exact sound that electrical arcing makes. So there's a good example for you. And there, make sure this one's definitely good, because this is the most important one of the whole shebang, with it being the main feed. Importance wise, it'd be this one, and then the feed to the next panel. Let's get in there. Okay. And I just like to wiggle every single one to just make sure there isn't any looseness on any of the wires that you are near. Make sure everything's connected to something else where it should be. You haven't accidentally disconnected anything, bumped it while you were working on it, etc. And that looks pretty good. Okay, our main feed is good. Alright, so now we do the smoke test. I'll flip your breakers all to the off position so that you have minimal chances for things to go crazy. So I'm just flipping them all off. And we'll start with our AC panel. So that's this breaker back here. And that is now on. On the AC side, looks like one of our outlets is not going. So be very careful, because I still have these energized, but I'm going to turn on my voltmeter. So this top one is the main feed, so we're going to check that one first. So on the feed side, so this panel goes through the inverter. So I think actually what's going on is so I'm not getting power there. I think it's because the DC side is off right now, and this inverter is showing a fault because there's no DC side. So I think what we need to do is turn off the charger. I guess we gotta set the clock first. Okay, fine. It is 4:25 p.m. Now, the easiest thing to do actually is just to reconnect the batteries, which is our house bank. So let's just do that. Okay. So as soon as we connected that, things got happy again. So this is now doing a float charge for us, and if we go over to AC meter, we see that we've got 122 volts again. Microwave light just came on. Our track lighting is on. That's the DC side. So these switches that I had turned on are now in good shape, and we can try turning on the water pressure. See what that does. So at this point, if we use the water a bit, you hear the pump kicked on. are good to go. So that's how you swap one of those breakers. And I now have a nice unique color for it. It's kind of annoying, but oh well. It's what they had in stock, so that's what I went with. But we are now running with full head of water. Head pressure, whatever you call it. Catch you later.